Welcome back to Swayam's first course ever on an Indian religion, on Jainism, offered through Flame University. My name is Dr. Pankaj Jain, and I am the professor and HOD at the Department of Humanities and Languages in Flame University. All right, so today's topic is how Jainism interacted with other Indian traditions such as Buddhism and Hinduism. So, Jainism vis a vis other traditions, other religions. So, as we enter this topic, we have to recognize that Jainism uses this elephant paradigm. What is the elephant paradigm? That there was an elephant, six blind people were trying to touch it and trying to figure out what this creature is. Whoever touches whichever part of the elephant wants to conclude that that's the final reality of elephant. So the message is that we all have partial perspectives, we all have deluded perspective, we all have our own version of reality. Doesn't mean that we have the monopoly on the understanding of the final reality. We all have different perspectives, we all are partially correct, but if we combine all our perspectives, we can reach the final ultimate reality. That is the Jain idea of Anekantavada. Anek, ek and anek. Anek means multiple. Anekantavada means multiple perspectives, non-one-sidedness. That nobody should say that my version of the reality is the only reality. We should respect and accept all versions of reality, all perspectives we have to accept. That is the core idea of Anekantavada, a significant, unique, hallmark contribution by Jainism to the world of philosophy, Indian philosophy and largely world philosophies now. So that is the elephant paradigm. So Professor Arvind Sharma very nicely summarized this entire philosophy in this line, in this equation, that the reality of plurality equals a plurality of reality. What does that mean? That plurality is the actual reality in the world, in the universe. There is no singularity in the universe. Reality exists in plurality. And that reality existing in multiple versions is the ultimate truth of plurality. That is the equation. So once again, the reality of plurality is a plurality of reality. That's to summarize this entire idea. All right, now, so this acceptance of other philosophies, other religions, other traditions is quoted by a number of Jain saints, Jain scholars, let's start from Hemchandra Muni, Hemchandra Suri, in 12th century CE. What did he say? He recommended honoring all religions, including Hinduism and Buddhism and others. Then Haribhadra Suri in 5th century CE said, I don't have any partiality for Mahavir, nor do I revile Hindu thinkers. I accept all thinkers to be respected, to be revered. Haribhadra Suri, 5th century CE. In 20th century, Vijayadharma Suri, he said, all religions are the same. Pretty radical statement. All religions are the same. Vijay Vallabh Suri, 19th century CE. I'm not a Jain, he's saying, as a Jain saint, he's saying, I'm not a Jain, a Buddhist, Vaishnav, Shaiv, Hindu, or Muslim. I'm beyond all these labels, is what he's saying. Mallavadi in 5th century CE, he came up with this idea of Anekantavada and seven Nayavad and Anekantavada was first given to us by Mallavadi in 5th century CE. So this is the history of ecumenical Jain theologians, Jain philosophers, Jain saints. All right, now let's take a deeper dive how Jains interacted with the Hindus. So many ford makers, many Tirthankaras are shown with Hindu gods, especially goddesses. So outside any Jain temple, the sanctum sanctorum, the central part of the Jain temple, you'll see outside that main area, you'll see Lakshmi, Padmavati, Saraswati, these goddesses are portrayed. So we see them as if they are kind of guardian deities for the main Tirthankara. So there is some representation of Hindu goddesses especially. So these guardian gods and goddesses with Shiva influences. So many of these guardian deities are called as Bhairavs, Kal Bhairavs, Nakoda Bhairav. Nakoda Bhairav is a very famous Jain temple in the desert part of Rajasthan, in Badmer area near Jodhpur, which I went there as a small child. But the word Bhairav itself is coming from Shiva influence, Kal Bhairav and so on, which are very popular temples, Hindu temples in Kashi, Varanasi and Ujjain and so on. Then third point, Nemi, the ford maker, the 22nd Tirthankar, Neminath, ford maker, he is mentioned in Jain texts as a cousin of Hindu god, Hindu hero of the Mahabharata, Lord Krishna. So Neminath is shown as a cousin of Krishna. So again, there is a attempt to make some relationship with Hindu tradition, Hindu gods. Then, first ford maker of this current time cycle of billions of years, the first ford maker, first Tirthankar was Rishabhnath, also called as Adinath. Adi means beginning, Lord of the beginnings in a way. Adinath, Rishabh. He is mentioned in Hindu texts, in Sanskrit texts, as a minor avatar incarnation of Vishnu. So Hindus also wanted to, Hindu scholars, Hindu writers wanted to incorporate Rishabh as their one of the minor incarnation, minor avatar, Ansha avatars of Vishnu. Just as they adopted Buddha as the ninth avatar of Vishnu, they adopted Rishabh, the first Tirthankar of Jainism, as a Ansha avatar, minor incarnation of Vishnu also. Alright, then Jain scholars did not shy away from criticizing Hindu ritual violence and even some of the Hindu violent gods. So anywhere they saw any violence, specifically the animals being sacrificed in Vedic rituals, was clearly an object of criticism for Jain scholars, so that was criticized heavily. They also rejected the Vedas because Vedas again were glorifying these violence as Jains saw them more than 2 millennia ago. Then Jains came up with their own versions of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and even their own Purans they created. They wrote new texts with the same title, Ramayana, Mahabharata and Mahapuran, Adi Puran and so on. In 4th century CE by Vimal Suri, 7th century CE by Ravi Shena, they wrote these new texts, same title but the new texts, Jain version of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Then they criticized, critique rather, this Hindu permanence of Brahman. Hindus say that Brahman is the ultimate permanent phenomenon of the universe, but Jains saw it as a not Anekantavad, Ekantavad. That Hindus are very Ekantavadi. They are biased, they are fixated on this one phenomenon of Brahman. But the reality may not exist in that one phenomenon only. Reality could be much more complex, much more multifold, much more infinite that we should be open to accept. But Hindu traditionally have glorified Advait Vedant as their highest, Mount Everest of Hindu philosophy. Many times it's called as Advait Vedant. Advait Vedant, of course, comes in several versions, Shuddha Advait, Kevala Advait, Dvaita Advait, and on, right? But Jains said all these are single pointedness. This is a bias towards Brahman, but we should be open to accept infinite Brahmans. Why take only one Brahman? Let's take infinite Atmans, infinite souls, infinite spirits in the universe. Every spirit, every soul, every Atman will remain separate and distinct even after moksha. So infinitude of Atmans is the final reality from Jain perspective. So that is the debate between Hinduism and Jainism for thousands of years. Now Jains and Buddhists. What is the tussle between Jains and Buddhists? Now let's see. Buddhists, first of all, had this disdain for Jain asceticism. Buddhists said, the Jains are too obsessed with austerities, asceticism, nakedness, fasting, and so on. So even Buddha was seen by Jains as a lapsed follower of Parshva. Buddha tried to follow Parshva's path, Parshva's teachings, but he could not. Buddha failed to maintain the high standards of Jain austerities. Buddha could not practice all those fasts and all those practices that are routinely practiced by Jain, even Jain lay people, but Buddha could not. So Buddha is a lapse. Buddha has had these shortcomings as he tried to practice Jain practices. So Jains satirized or made fun of the Buddhist monastic life. That Buddhists are no better than even our lay people. Even lay people, our Jain lay people can do better than Buddhist ascetics. So this kind of an argumentation went on for thousands of years, for centuries at least. So now, just as Hindus highlight Brahman as the ultimate reality, Buddhists typically highlight Shunyata, emptiness, vacuum, emptiness, Shunyata, as the ultimate reality, nothingness. So that was also critiqued by Jains. They said once again, you are being Ekantvadi, not Anekantavadi. You are too fixated on this idea of Shunyata, of emptiness. But the ultimate reality may not be as this close to this emptiness. Rather than getting fixated on emptiness, we should be again open to accept reality in infinitude. So that was again a intellectual tussle among the Buddhists and Jains for centuries. All right, now let's try to define what Anekantavad is. Anekantavad, like I said, Vad is doctrine, Anek, multiple, Ek is one, Anek is multiple, Anekantavad means multiple pointedness or many pointedness or non-one-sidedness. So what's the idea here? So Jain said, soul exists. That matches with Hindu idea also, that soul is the final reality for each person. So can Jains at least argue that this Anekantavad ensured that ahimsa, non-violence, is maintained even at the intellectual level. Physical violence is of course prohibited, but even intellectually, you should be open to accept others' viewpoints. So you maintain non-violence physically, that is by your body, but also by intellectually, by your thought, by your speech, because you accept everybody as partially true. Not full truth at least, but at least accept that everybody is partially true. So that's the elephant paradigms, like I alluded in the beginning. So Anekantavad is closely related to Nayavad, in which there are 7 perspectives towards reality. 7 kinds of properties, 7 kinds of ways to describe the ultimate reality. What are those 7 ways? So first is general and specific property. Second is general property of the final reality. Third is specific property. Fourth is reality as existing in the present time. Fifth is tense and grammar limitation. So linguistically, how you define the reality. Sixth is etymological limitation, in which we try to go to the root of that word in which we are describing the reality. And seventh is semantic limitation. Even though you might be using a specific word to define the reality, but semantically, the meaning of that word may have certain limitations also. We'll take a look what all these words mean in the next slide. All right. Now the Nayavad, Saptabhangi Naya, 7 perspectives of final reality. What are those 7? So now let's take the example. So first is Naigama, the common point of view, that this is a table where I'm speaking right now. There's a table. So this is simply a common point of view, is that it's a table. Second, Sangraha, the general point of view, the category of all tables or tableness, that this table is a member of the class of tables. So all tables have some tableness. So this is also a table. That is a very, again, general point of view. Third, now Vyavahar, the specific point of view. Specifics of this particular table where I'm sitting right now, or this chair, that this has this dimension, this has this height, this color, this weight, this width. So very specifically, I can describe this table or this chair. Then fourth, the immediate here and now point of view, as mentioned as Riju Sutra. The table is viewed in terms of its existence at time X at place Y. Right now at this time is now 11:15 a.m. and Thursday, October 24th. So right now, this table is existing at this time, at this place near Pune, somewhere in Maharashtra, right? So, but this table may not exist 100 years after today. So tableness is real, is very real right now at this right time, but maybe not 100 years later. So that's another time-bound description of the reality. Fifth is Shabda, the verbal point of view. A table is made of wood, table is a noun. When I say table is made of wood, table is a noun. But if I use the same word table in the sentence like, I move to table the motion, now table becomes a verb. Like in a parliament or in an assembly of lawmakers, somebody can say that I move to table the motion. Now table has become a verb. So table can be used as a noun or as a verb. That's the verbal point, linguistic point of view. Sixth, Samabhiruddha, the etymological point of view. Table as derived from the Latin tabula, flat board. Table is coming from tabula rasa, that is flat board, blank slate, is often described, the child's mind is often described like that. So table can be connected with the flat board, the Latin root of tabula. So etymologically, as we describe the reality, the words can be again analyzed. Seventh, Evam bhuta, a functional point of view, in which we say not a table if I'm sitting on it, but only if I'm sitting at it. If I'm sitting beside the table, then that's a table. But if I sit on the table has now become a chair. So how I use the reality or any object can also affect its meaning. What exists, how exactly it exists in reality can depend on its usage also. So these are the saptabhangi nay for example. Once again, so naigama view, sangraha, vyavahara, riju, shabd, samabhiruddha, and evam bhuta. These are the 7 perspectives to describe a reality, the reality, saptabhangi nay. Then Syadvad. Syadvad is crudely translated as maybeism or perhapsism or doctrine of perhaps, doctrine of possibilities, doctrine of potentialities. First, positive attribution plus. Second, negative attribution, negative. Third is when you combine positive and negative attributions. Fourth is inexpressibility. Reality cannot be expressed in words. Fifth is when you combine positive attributions and inexpressibility. Then sixth is negative attributions and inexpressibility. If you combine, that becomes sixth perspective. Seventh is positive attributions, negative attributions, and inexpressibility, plus, minus, and zero. Example. Examples of conditional assertion. From a certain perspective, the table exists physically. From a certain perspective, the table does not exist. From a quantum perspective, there is no table, but there's simply a dance of energy, dance of protons, electrons, and quantum points, and so on. But there is no actually table because matter is porous from quantum perspective. Third, if you combine plus, that is first and second, from a certain perspective, the table exists, and from another perspective, it does not exist. I combine first and second. Fourth, from a certain perspective, the nature of the table is inexpressible. I can't express because table is inexpressible. Reality cannot be expressed. Final reality cannot be expressed. Fifth, from a certain perspective, the table exists. So I'm combining now first and fourth. So from a certain perspective, the table exists. And from another perspective, the nature of the table is inexpressible. Now sixth, in sixth, I will combine second and fourth. So I can say, from a certain perspective, the table does not exist. And from another perspective, the nature of the table is inexpressible. And finally, seventh perspective, I can say by combining first, second, and fourth. So I can say, from a certain perspective, the table exists. From another perspective, the table does not exist. And from the third perspective, the nature of the table is inexpressible. So all these viewpoints were combined to make sure that no fanaticism, no dogmatism should ever occur in Jain debates, to accept Buddhist ideas, to accept Hindu ideas, multiple ways of Hindu ideas, Advait and Dvait, all of that are partial truths. Similarly, Buddhist, all the sectarian views were accepted, and that is how Anekantavada accepts the multiple perspectives to describe the final reality. This is how Anekantavada, Syadvad, and Nayavad were used in debates for centuries and centuries. So that completes this discussion of Anekantavad, Syadvad, and Nayavad. Thank you.